Well, so just another one. This time it is about depression and what are called SSRIs, so selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, right? And the idea around these, you might have heard of them. You might not have heard the term SSRIs. You might have heard of Zoloft or Lexapro or what are the other ones? Can't even think off the top of my head. I don't know. I'll have a few little names here. You get the point anyway. Antidepressants. Prozac is the one I was thinking of, right? So Paxil, and there was another one. I can't remember the name of it, but into the Z. They all have these weird names, right? Loads of X's and Z's thrown in there, but this is to try and dispel some of the common misconceptions around depression and the SSRIs, right? So, fortunately, in 2022, there was a study done, and it was so you can have singular studies, right? So 10 people were given this, 5 people felt better, therefore 50% efficacy rate, right? But then you can have studies of, or a study of a load of collective studies, and that's called like a meta-analysis, right? So what this is a study of meta-analysis. So this overall, an umbrella study, is essentially studying a plethora of different studies, right? And it's going to combine all of these things and try and extract a concentrated truth, or something closer to a concentrated truth, from all of the study of all of these studies, right? So the headline of, not this study, but the article that it was shared in, right? And it was from, I got it now for you. I'll share the link of it down below as well. So it is from ucl.ac.uk, right? So it's official education website, so to speak, right? And it's from the 20th of July 2022. I spoke of this before, but I think it's worthy of speaking about again, right? And it says, I'll quote a little bit from it here. Hang on, after chopping down, yeah. So the headline is, no evidence that depression is caused by low serotonin levels. So the idea, the common understanding, right, that we've been fed over the few decades is that depression is caused by low levels of serotonin, right? And you're given these SSRIs, or these antidepressants, to enable you to retain more serotonin, essentially, right? Therefore, more serotonin, better mood, depression, bye-bye, that kind of thing, right? So I'm sure most people are aware of this, right? Probably not the nitty-gritty of it, but at least the idea that antidepressants, serotonin, all that stuff. So I'll read a couple of paragraphs from this study, and it said, yeah, very large studies involving tens of thousands of patients. Again, so it's not just a handful of people. Tens of thousands of patients looked at gene variation to try and explain the causal mechanism, or the mechanism for causing depression, or that causes depression. Looked at gene variation, including the gene for the serotonin transporter. They found no difference in these genes between people with depression and healthy people, healthy controls. These studies also looked at the effects of stressful life events and found that these exerted a strong effect on people's risk of becoming depressed. Do you need research for this? If your life is becoming unmanageable and you're feeling burdened down and you can't cope and you can't see a way out, and this is experienced at a protracted rate, right? So it's a continuous feeling of, what's the point? Eventually your nervous system just crashes, right? It freezes you, it stops you, and it forces you to reflect on what you're doing in your life. because it's a warning sign. You cannot continue at this pace with this burden. You are incapable of going any further at this pace, right, at this rate. So your nervous system, your autonomic nervous system just crashes, right? It just cancels itself out. It's like sticking the foot on the accelerator and the brake at the same time and just holding them there, full whack. Bang, engine just goes, car just goes. Your nervous system just flatlines, right? Depression. You can physically depress a football, right? I mean, to flatten it, to depress it, to push it in, to flatten it, right? That's what it is. Your nervous system just goes, no more. Time for break. We go to we'll have a little break, right? And we will force you to not be able to eat, not be able to sleep, and force you to reflect on things, or force you to sleep at crazy rates to regenerate yourself, right? To heal yourself. This isn't complicated, right? This is kind of common sense. You know this stuff. Once you trust your senses, you see this stuff, experience this stuff. You have to be overly educated to believe that there's any other reason behind it, right? Other than life circumstances and your ability to maintain whatever pace you're tackling life at. So these studies also looked at the effects of stressful life events, found that these exerted a strong effect on people's risk of becoming depressed. The more stressful life events a person had experienced, the more likely they were to be depressed, right? If you speak to depressed people, you'll find things that are making them miserable. It's as simple as that, right? It doesn't have to have been something that happened 2 weeks ago. It could be something that happened 10 years ago. That's just bubbling to the surface and it just flatlines people, right? It takes them out. They also say, the researchers say their findings are important as studies show that as many as 85 to 90% of people, of the public, believes that depression is caused by low serotonin or a chemical imbalance, right? You've heard that before. Chemical imbalance. It's not my fault of a chemical imbalance. No evidence of this. No evidence of this. A growing number of scientists and professional bodies are recognizing the chemical imbalance framing as an oversimplification, right? Because again, cart before the horse, right? So even if there is some sort of chemical imbalance, which there doesn't seem to be any evidence for, right? But you could argue that that's caused by the feelings that you're having. And it's not the chemical imbalance that's causing the feelings. It's a feedback loop, right? Because we know now the brain is plastic, neuroplasticity, right? Your nervous system, your genes even express themselves differently depending on how you view the world, how you view yourself, and how you view your relation to the things around you, how you view your relation to your own existence, right? That changes everything in your body. Nervous system, gene expression, all that sort of stuff. Shape of your brain, size of your brain, the growth of your brain, all them kinds of things, right? Back down to you, how you feel. And we reduce it then to the tiniest, smallest little element of our own physical makeup that we can't even see. We need microscopes or whatever to look at it, right? Really strong, powerful things to be able to even see these things. And we reduce something that is so holistic of a person's assessment and overall view, their overall conception of themselves as a person. We reduce that to a tiny, 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 smallest little part of them. It's disrespectful, to say the least. It's anti-human, right? And this stuff is not new either. So this study is in 2022, but I've been reading about this stuff for years prior to that, right? Because you'd have your own experience, right? And you'd question things and you'd look at it and go, well, I don't know about that. That don't seem to make sense to me. That's not matching up with what I'm seeing, right? So, and in Ireland's example, then we have Dr. Terry Lynch, who wrote a book, great book as well, it's worth a read, called The Depression Delusion, The Myth of the Brain Chemical Imbalance. And this was released in 2015, so 10 years ago, so 7 years before the study. So now we get on to, this is from the HSE, so scratch that. It's not. I was reading something else from the HSE. That's another video. So these are just things pulled from Grok, right? Give a general flavour of things. So according to the information on web results, there's been a significant increase in the prescription rates of SSRIs in Ireland. For instance, from 2009 to 2017, HSE prescriptions for antidepressants, which include SSRIs, increased by 64%. This suggests a growing market for these medications. No doubt. And again, you look at this, so if someone is chronically depressed, they're probably not working. If they're not working, they're probably on sick benefit or whatever it is, right? And they have a medical card to be able to pay for the medications they have. So you're paying for this. So it's in your interest to understand this stuff, right? Because it affects you directly, whether you realize it or not. Global market size and growth. The global SSRIs market was valued at around US dollars 18.2 billion, in 2023, and is projected to reach nearly 28 billion by 2030, growing at a compound annual rate of approximately 5% during the forecast period from 2023 to 2030. So they're estimating. It's such a sick thing, like, isn't it? And so gambling, essentially. So what's the increase of depression rates going to be like over the next few years, huh? You know, they can nearly guess it because it's manufactured, okay? Doesn't mean it's not real, but it's manufactured. People profit off you being miserable and sick, even profit off you killing yourself, right? These things, dirty, dirty world we're living in. In 2016, it was reported that 18.5% of the Irish population experienced some form of mental health disorder, including depression, which places Ireland among the highest in Europe for mental health issues. This was part of an OECD report highlighting Ireland's position as having one of the highest rates of mental health illness in Europe. And people, probably justifiably so in some regard, right, will jump off the sofa, jump off the couch and go, they're lying. Mental health is nonsense. Grand, yeah, the term itself is nonsense. But feelings of despair and no longer willing to continue with your life and questioning things to the point where you can't do anything, they're legitimate things, right? They're legitimate things. And you obviously have people then, the new back injury, right? I'm suffering with my anxiety, therefore I can't do anything. I might be able to have a couple of glasses of wine the weekend, but I can't do anything else, right? There's obviously people that play the system. Of course there is. So we'll continue on. Ireland has been highlighted for having the highest rate of chronic depression in Europe, with 1 in 8 people reporting recent experiences of chronic depression in a Eurostat study from 2014 to 2015. This rate was 12%, 1 in 8 people chronically depressed, significantly above the EU average of 7%. I would imagine that's much higher now. Ireland stands out particularly for high depression rates amongst young people. A Eurostat report from 2019, report from 2019 noted that 12% of young Irish people aged 15 to 24 suffered from chronic depression, which is the highest rate in Europe for this demographic. So generally, highest rate in Europe, young people, highest rate in Europe for misery. Not enjoying life. Not even wanting to be here, really. We're winning that one, lads. Well done. And if you want to try and fix that or call out any issues that might be impacting on that, well, no one cares, right? There's also a notable gender gap, with young women experiencing depression at nearly twice the rate of young men. I would argue that that's because the young men kill themselves in this country at a rate that is probably in the top 5 in Europe. The only worse countries than us are Eastern European countries, right? So approximately 6,000 people annually are hospitalised for depression in Ireland, representing about 30% of mental health inpatient admissions. So this stuff is avoidable. Again, how much is that costing? Bring it back to money, because that's all this people seem to care about. It's costing you money. Miserably depressed young people are costing you money. And that doesn't mean you should hate them or look down on them in any way. It means you should stand up as an adult and go, well, what's going on here? What is going on here? If their misery and depression is linked to me or extracts something from me, so it directly influences me, is there anything I'm doing that might send that influence in another direction? Right? That isn't the money, a monetary influence. It might be some other social influence. Is there anything I'm doing that might be adding to the social misery in this country? Right? Good question to ponder. Most people go, of course there's not. I don't even have to ask the question. Right? We all know a handful of these people, right? There's also an observed rise in long-term antidepressant use, suggesting please help me with this one, chronicity or challenges in medication cessation. And I don't know, I'm not, my ear to the ground is not as low as it once was, right? So in my time, if you were given antidepressants, more than likely you were given anti-anxiety medication as well, whether that's Valium or Xanax or whatever generic version of it. And the withdrawals trying to come off of them tablets, dangerous game, right? So what they do, the medical industry in this country, is it produces drug addicts, because you're meant to just get these anti-anxiety medications for 12 weeks at a time, and then you're reviewed. But a lot of people are on them for years and years and years. Sleeping tablets are thrown into the mix as well, right? And the withdrawals from these can kill people, and not to mention the deaths of people on these tablets, stairs, falls, these kinds of things, car crashes. And what happens then is, if you get pulled off them, the only thing that's probably more dangerous than this, if not just as dangerous of withdrawing from, is long-term alcoholism. Withdrawal from anti-anxiety medications and withdrawal from alcohol can kill people, and it does kill people. So what happens then to try and feed that monster, right? Feed that habit, is you buy drugs street level. You become a drug addict. You're already a drug addict, right? But you become what regular people would call a drug addict. I'm not a drug addict. I only take my Xanax and my sleeping tablets daily for years, every day. Can't live without them. I've no problem. Okay? Because the doctor said so. Right? But if you buy the very same tablets off someone down the street, but you've no prescription, then you're a drug addict. Right, I have a vaccine to sell you as well, right? So effects associated with antidepressants. Funnily enough, suicidal thoughts and behavior. And in some of them as well, it's noted that one of the side effects is homicidal behavior. And it's interesting, I can't remember the name, but now I'll get it quickly for you there, but there is an author who wrote a book about a school, something that happened in a school in America, and I don't even know if we can say the name of it, right? And she was speaking about the link between people who shoot up schools. Screening Sandy Hook is the name of the book, right? I get the author's name. Beverly Thompson is the woman's name, unless Beverly's a man, but Beverly Thompson is the author's name. Screening Sandy Hook is the name, and she was looking at the connection between SSRIs and school shooters, right? A lot of them tend to be on these antidepressant medications, which doesn't directly say that these things cause it, because so many people in America are on them anyway, but it's an interesting correlation, right? Because what these things can lead to is a depersonalization, a desensitization to emotion, right? And it's startling because in one way you can say, because people might say, even thinking this now, if not ready to write the comment, right? I was on antidepressants and they work for me. Fine. But that it depends on what you mean by work, right? Because what antidepressants do is they essentially numb you to feeling. So you don't feel depressed anymore, but you certainly don't get happy, right? You're just monotone. I wouldn't even call it neutral because it's cloudy. It's a kind of zombified existence, right? And because of that, you don't feel real. You tend not to feel like you are in your body, right? You become sort of semi-disembodied or dissociated in some way, right? So the idea of you being a human being is kind of goes away a little bit, right? You become weird in context of being normal, right? So of how you normally would have felt. So we have one of the side effects, suicidal thoughts and behavior. I'd add in there homicidal thoughts and behavior also. Serotonin syndrome. This can occur when there's too much serotonin in the body, often from taking multiple medications that affect serotonin levels. Symptoms can range from mild shivering or diarrhea to severe high fever, seizures, irregular heartbeat, and in extreme cases can be fatal. You have to factor that in when you're looking at what's been going on around the place recently. Sexual dysfunction speaks for itself. Mania or hypomania. Withdrawal symptoms, we looked at that. Weight gain, bone health, neurological effects, cardiac effects, right? So there's serious health implications for this stuff, or potential side effects at least, right? And a significant portion of Irish people are being prescribed these things. There is hundreds of millions, if not billions, being made off of these things, and they are not grounded in any sort of scientific research or reality. The theory that underpins the sale of these things is actually defunct. It's not real. So these things have been given to people, and people are spending or getting taxed to fund these things, and they don't even do what they're supposed to do. It's built on a lie, as usual, right? The health industry, the psychiatric industry, the medical industry, so much of the stuff that they offer out and that has become accepted as common knowledge is absolute nonsense and lies. Totally wrong at best, blatant lies at worst, right? And there's other theories that go a long way towards explaining what depression is, and I'm probably going to cover them over the next little while, because I enjoy that stuff, right? So there you go.